So we are here with Prime Ministerial candidate um, for Guyana, Mr. Brigadier Mark Phillips, and we are going to be speaking to him about um, everything relating to the Guyana elections and what the future is looking like for Guyana. Mr. Phillips, just briefly introduce yourself, tell us who you are and your affiliation or your organization that you represent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delroy Louison. Viewers in the Grenada, thank you for having me on this program and for giving me the opportunity to tell you as much as I can about elections and the political situation in Guyana. All my interviews, I've been truthful, and there's no need for any propaganda on my behalf because, as I said before in other interviews, we have won the elections and we can only communicate the facts that led to us winning the elections. By way of introduction, I am Mark Anthony Phillips. I served 36 years in the Guyana Defense Force. And you know, that is the army in Guyana, not the police force, the Guyana Defense Force, the local army in Guyana. And during the 36 years, I've moved through from officer cadet, second lieutenant, lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, and to the rank of brigadier. Some people refer to it as brigadier general, the highest rank in the Guyana Defense Force. And in addition to attaining the highest rank in the Guyana Defense Force, for the last 3 years of my 36 years, I was the commander of the Guyana Defense Force. And here in Guyana, we refer to the officer who is in charge or who is in command of the Guyana Defense Force as the chief of staff of the Guyana Defense Force. So from 2013, September 2013 to October 2016, just about 3 years, I was the chief of staff of the Guyana Defense Force. I retired on attaining the age of retirement. You know, we retire fairly early in Guyana. At 55 years old, I became a retiree. And for the last 4 years, I basically was enjoying my retirement until I decided to enter into the politics of Guyana. And on the 5th of January, 2020, I was selected as the prime ministerial candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic in the elections that were held on the 2nd of March. And let me explain to you, in our system, we have a presidential candidate and the prime ministerial candidate. I know in your system you have the prime minister. The prime minister is the executive. In our system, the president is the executive and the prime minister is like the number 2, like the vice president. I don't know if that explains everything so far.
Right. Yes, you have explained. You have given us enough information to work with here. I should have introduced myself earlier. I am Delroy Louison. I am from Grenada, and I am a journalist by profession, currently the first vice president of the Media Workers Association of Grenada. And I am mostly now into public relations, but I also do freelance journalism. So thank you very much for the opportunity again to speak with you, sir. There is no doubt, it is very clear that there has been a struggle in terms of the Guyana elections and so forth, post March 2nd. For quite some time, the struggle has been, Guyana has been facing that struggle with the inconclusive results for quite some time. And then as of recent, the results was presented. by the Guyana Elections Commission. Am I correct?
Well, the results are not in as yet. There's no declaration.
Not in as yet.
What has happened on Tuesday? The chief elections officer presented a report, and what is deemed an erroneous report, a fraudulent report, to the Elections Commission. So we are waiting on the Elections Commission's next move. What has also happened is through the court system, there's a matter pertaining to the elections that is now before the Caribbean Court of Justice. And that matter is slated to be heard on Wednesday, the 1st of July. So I rather suspect the Guyana Elections Commission has reached a point where they've decided to await the outcome of the matter before the Caribbean Court of Justice before they issue any further instructions to the chief election officer.
Okay, right. Thank you very much for that clarification. So what happens then after July 1st? What happens following that court matter ruling?
Well, we still have to await the final declaration of the results by the Guyana Elections Commission. They still have to declare those results, and that will determine who will be forming the next government in Guyana. But if I can recap, remember we had the elections on the 2nd of March. Okay? By the 4th or the 5th of March, we had reasons to go before the court for that elections, because there's one Mr. Claremont Mingo who attempted to commit a fraud at that elections. So this matter went before the court. Eventually, after 2 hearings in the court, we've reached a point where the president of Guyana and the leader of the opposition in Guyana, through the intervention of the chairperson of the Caribbean community, you know the chairperson is the Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motley.
Right, the outgoing chairperson.
Exactly, the outgoing chairperson. She came to Guyana with a team, heading a team of 5 prime ministers. And basically what they did was to broker an agreement for a recount of the votes. We had several challenges where that recount of the votes process was stalled, but it finally came on board, and after 33 days of counting, we've reached to the stage where we have the results of the recount of the votes. And the recount results clearly show the People's Progressive Party, Civic, my party, as winning the elections. At the end of the recount process, and I want to make this clear, we had tabulated 460,352 valid votes. Some 233,000 valid votes went to our party, and 217,000 valid votes to the coalition, the APNU-AFC. So we have won these elections by just over 15,000 valid votes. That is on record. That is recorded in the statements of the recount. The entire Caribbean, the entire world, the Guyanese public is aware of those results. So we're just awaiting GECOM, the Guyana Elections Commission, to make their official declaration.
So you're saying that we can also foresee the possibility of this whole fiasco, if I should call it, going on for much longer.
Well, yes, it will go on for a couple of days until the Guyana Election Commission reaches the point where they will make their final declaration. Let me explain to you. The Guyana Elections Commission, you have a chairperson, and that chairperson is retired Justice Claudette Singh. And we have 3 commissioners from the governing party, that's the APNU AFC, and 3 commissioners from the opposition party. And the opposition party is the PPPC, my party. So they will have to meet, and they will have to determine the way forward. And many times they go to a vote, and the casting vote is held by the chairperson. 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, and the chairperson will have the casting vote to determine where the decision will fall. Whether it fall on the opposition side or it fall on the the government side. So that is the situation we're in.
Okay. I have also seen that during the process, I think approximately 115,000 votes were deemed invalid, if I should say so.
Yes,
Tell me about that.
You're correct. Now, according to the laws of Guyana, all the chief election officer is expected to do is to present a report that represents the tabulation of the votes. In this case, a report that represents the tabulation of the statements of recount, along with observations that were made during the recount process to the commission. What the chief election officer did, quite erroneously and quite fraudulently, is to, in his report, disenfranchise 115,000 votes, because he claimed that these votes represent people who were deemed as irregular in the electoral process, whether they were people who were dead who were allowed to vote, people who were not in Guyana, but somebody voted for them, and a whole set of irregularities that they came up with. And he basically, with his own mathematics, decided that he will disenfranchise a number of voters in order to submit his report, which he deemed is the proper report. But according to the laws of Guyana, we already established we had 460,000 valid votes. So Mr. Lowenfield has no authority under the laws of Guyana to deduct or to disenfranchise or subtract any of those 460,000 votes. All Mr. Lowenfield is expected to do, as I explained earlier, is to tabulate the votes and say which party received how many votes, and in his observation report, state a summary of all the observations that were noted during the recount process. That is all he had to do. Mr. Lowenfield, in essence, failed to do his job. Mr. Lowenfield, in essence, violated the Representation of the People Act, the laws governing the electoral process in Guyana. And Mr. Lowenfield, in that process, disenfranchised a number of Guyanese. The bottom line is, Mr. Lowenfield committed fraud in Guyana, and he should be before the courts of Guyana as I speak.
Okay, so if indeed those amount of votes were deducted or disenfranchised, as you said, would that have changed the direction of the results from one party to the next?
Well, that's the whole aim of him doing that. Because in disenfranchising 115,000 voters, he arrives at figures that give victory to the APNU AFC. You with me here? And
yes, I am.
That is wrong. That is a fraudulent act. And Mr. Lowenfield is not entitled, is not authorized to invalidate, to disenfranchise any voters. All that Mr. Lowenfield is expected to do, all that Mr. Lowenfield is authorized to do, is whatever are the results, tabulate the results and submit it. A factual report, not to submit a report based on his opinion as to what transpired. Mr. Lowenfield's report must only include the votes that were already established as valid votes. He cannot subtract, he cannot disenfranchise, he cannot invalidate any of those votes. So what is likely to happen, based on my limited knowledge, is the Elections Commission is likely to instruct Mr. Lowenfield to go back and prepare an accurate report representing what transpired during the recount process.
Right.
So his report will be rejected, and he will be ordered to resubmit and to submit another report reflecting accurately what transpired at the recount process, because all the information is already there. And I mentioned before, all the information was made public at the end of the recount process.
Right. So you were saying that the gentleman, he committed a fraudulent act. So if he did, in fact, commit a fraudulent act, why isn't he before the law courts?
Well, the Elections Commission has the authority to make decisions pertaining to him being investigated by the court system in Guyana. So we have to await their decision-making process.
Okay, so the chief elections officer is separate and apart from GCOM?
Exactly. The Guyana Elections Commission is a constitutional body. The chief elections officer is a statutory appointment. He is appointed chief elections officer by the Guyana Elections Commission. They can hire him, they can fire him, and they could discipline him because he's subject to the control and supervision of the of the Guyana Elections Commission.
Right, understood. Speak to us a bit about the current atmosphere in Guyana. I mean, the Guyanese have been through quite a lot since March 2nd. I mean, you go out there on March 2nd to cast your votes, and then you find out that months after, you still cannot receive a clear results. You know, speak to us about the atmosphere right now in Guyana.
Let me be frank with you. The atmosphere from a political standpoint remains tense in Guyana, but there's still a lot of calmness among the people. There's no violence. There's no violence in Guyana. The people are focused on the attendant issues affecting life in Guyana today. As you're aware, we have a pandemic. It is affecting Grenada. It's affecting all the countries in the Caribbean, and it's affecting Guyana too. The COVID-19. We have other issues in Guyana. The economy, right? It's severely affected by COVID-19, and frankly speaking, by the political impasse in Guyana. We have a lot of people especially as related to COVID-19, who are dealing and grappling with bread and butter issues, like in any country, because many people are unemployed because of COVID-19. They have a lot of issues pertaining to how they're gonna survive, how they're gonna feed their families on a daily basis. But the Guyanese people are a resilient people. And while we anxiously awaiting the outcome of this whole electoral and political impasse in Guyana, the people has been and continue to be relatively calm. And I must commend the Guyanese for that. Perhaps it's one of the things that we're noted for throughout the world, for being a people who are resilient, who can be calm under trying situations.
I must agree with you, because that is very, very outstanding, I must say, for a people to remain so calm and peaceful in all of this mess, if you want to call it, all of this fiasco. So tell us, following these final results that we're expecting from GCOM after the court ruling, speak to us about the plans for you and your party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, moving forward.
Moving forward, we expect on the declaration of the results, and we're confident that the results will declare the People's Progressive Party Civic as the winner, and therefore we will be forming the next government. And we are ready to implement our developmental programs that we have already identified, formulated, and communicated to the people of Guyana during the campaign in the form of our manifesto and our political speeches. What we're anxiously awaiting is to concretize those plans into programs and projects that will be implemented to improve the life of the Guyanese people. And there's a commitment we've made during the electoral process, during our campaigns, and there's a commitment that we will continue to uphold for the next 5 years of the lifetime of our government, that we will govern Guyana for all Guyanese. We're not interested in whether you voted for another party other than our party. Once we form the government, our developmental approach is for the benefit of all Guyanese. As you know, we are a working class government in the sense that we focus on alleviating the lifestyle, improving the lifestyle of the working class in Guyana. Projects pertaining to improvement in health, improvement in housing, employment creation, improvement in education, infrastructural development, and the attracting of investment to Guyana, especially foreign direct investment to Guyana. As you know, Guyana is also now an oil producing nation. And it is our interest to ensure that the revenues from the oil production is used to improve the life of all Guyanese, is used to develop Guyana and to modernize Guyana. So in the next 5 years from now, under a PPPC government, we expect the people to see improvements in all aspects of life in Guyana. And when we go in 2025 to the people for a second term, we're confident that based on the delivery of our manifesto promises to the people will elect us again come 2025.
All right, Mr. Phillips, as a leader and also as prospective Prime Minister of Guyana, speak to us about, first of all, tell us, do you think that something can be done to prevent the reoccurrence of what is happening right now in terms of the elections in Guyana? And if so, what do you think can be done to prevent that reoccurrence?
Well, I will speak generally about it in the sense that what we will do, and this is likely to commence within the first 100 days, is that we will revisit the electoral laws of Guyana and initiate a series of electoral reforms to improve the conduct of elections in Guyana and not to have us having ourselves in a situation like we are in the next 5 years. What is also important to Guyana, and this is based more on the peculiar political situation of Guyana, is not only electoral reforms, but constitutional reforms in general. And as we said before, inclusive governance after the determination as to who formed the government in Guyana. Inclusive governance and constitutional reform, along with electoral reform, will be front burner issues for Guyana as we move forward.
Thank you very much for that. I know we're generally speaking about Guyana elections here, but we cannot shy away from the fact that the world is facing right now a pandemic, and we have never seen the disease or a virus like that before, the coronavirus or COVID-19 as we know it. Speak to us about Guyana's fight against COVID-19 and some of the things that you think not only Guyana but the region can do in order to fight this virus and also to prepare for any virus of the sort that may come in the future.
Well, first of all, the approach to dealing with this COVID-19 in Guyana, as you would agree with me, is severely affected by the political situation in Guyana. Notwithstanding, we have a COVID-19 task force and the PPP Civic, even though we're in opposition, we have a COVID-19 task force that is working to alleviate the sufferings by, affected by people affected as a result of COVID-19 in Guyana. And we are certain that once we get into government, what is happening in Guyana with regards to countering the effects of COVID-19 will be better organized and will be better serve the people of Guyana. So we are anxiously awaiting our opportunity to form the government and to restructure what is happening in relation to the fight against COVID-19 so that we could better deliver a better health plan for the people of Guyana. Now, COVID-19, like any pandemic, there are opportunities, even though there are threats to our livelihood, there are opportunities. And right now, there's an opportunity that we are embracing closer now, as I speak to you, technology. And it's our hope that we will continue to leverage technology to do things better in Guyana. So sometimes when we face with another disaster, our level of scientific, medical, and technological use will be at such a level that we can grapple and that we can deal with any future disaster better than we're doing now.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Another thing that we have been, a recent development that we have been seeing is the issue of LIAT, the Caribbean Airlines, and we know how much LIAT has helped the region to come together. It's one of the few airlines working in the Caribbean. So speak to us about what we presently know now as a possible liquidation of LIAT and forming another airline. What do you think about that?
Well, I personally don't have a view on what is happening with LIAT, but I respect that they're heads of government that form themselves into a group that looks into the strategic direction of LIAT and whatever successor airline will be formed. And I will want to respect their work and their views as it pertains to LIAT. Personally, as they make their decisions, we hope that the flights to Guyana can continue, whether it be in the form of LIAT or whatever successor airline. The flights to Guyana can continue.
Thank you. And finally, from me, sir, we know that unemployment is one of the topics or being affected by the coronavirus, not just in the region but worldwide. What are some of the things that you think leaders in the region can do to improve the unemployment situation and prepare for the future post-COVID-19?
Well, again, this is perhaps a little difficult one for me, but in attempting an answer, I would say that the whole source of the unemployment is linked to the strategy for fighting the disease. I mean, we all know about social distancing, okay? Using a mask, washing hands, especially the social distancing has caused any responsible government to force a number of employees to remain at home in order to curb the spread of the disease. The fact is, as we move forward, the workplace will have to be changed, will have to be adjusted to suit the realities that we are in right now. There's no likelihood that we could be going back to workplaces that are crowded because, as you can see in America and in many of the developed countries who've lifted the, the restrictions, they're now reimposing those restrictions. Okay, so COVID-19 will force us to approach everything, including work, including schooling, right, in a different manner from the traditional mindset that we have right now. So yes, we will continue to have employment, but more and more people will be working from home. More and more, some of the unskilled workers will have to benefit from support from the government because, you know, they cannot continue in the traditional activities because that itself can lead to the spread of the disease. So more and more we see government getting involved in assistance to people who cannot work in the traditional manner. So the bottom line is the government is going to get closer to the people. We're going to embrace technology in a more aggressive manner than we're doing right now. And the whole atmosphere, the whole approach to work and workplace will change. That is the reality.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with the Prime Ministerial candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic, Guyana, Mr. Brigadier Mark Phillips. Sir, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. We thank you very much for the opportunity, and we look forward to a speedy resolution of the problem right now, the elections problem right in Guyana at this moment. Thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking to you.
Thank you for having me on your program, Mr. Delroy Louison, and thank you to the people of Grenada for listening to me.